What is up, y'all? Dan back at you with another video. And in today's video, we're talking about Crota's Inn, specifically the weapons you should be taking into Crota's Inn. Now, we don't know everything that's going to be changing in Crota's Inn, but I have done Crota's Inn a lot back in the day, and I know what to expect. And I think these weapons, from top to bottom, are going to be very, very good and confirmed to take care of whatever you need to in the raid. My thought process behind this was, if loadouts are still locked, if for some reason dim crashes and you can only use the weapons that are on your person when you launch the raid, what will be the weapons you should make sure you have, so no matter your role, no matter what your class is, you can be beneficial to the team, and you can also help make sure the team gets to clear day one. To start off, in no particular order, we're going to run Succession. As we know, there's a lot of Shriekers, there are Ogres, there are Acolytes, there are Hive Knights, there's a lot of Wizards as well. There's a lot of enemies that are going to be high threats, and you might not be able to get close to kill. Succession is going to be a very, 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 very solid pick to take out anything ranged and safely. So there are other options if you don't have a Succession, but if you do have Succession, I would bring this in. If you don't have a Succession, you have a few days to go do Deepstone Crypt and get a Succession. This is one of the most important, maybe not the most, but one of the safest bets to have. The next one being Touch of Malice. As you'll see in each slot, there's a few weapons that I think you need to bring, and you're only going to use if you're in a pinch and you have no ammo and it's final stand or time's running out and you don't have any heavy bricks or special bricks and you need something to do something damage really quickly. My thought process behind this is, day one caretaker, where a lot of teams, fell onto Outbreak Prime or Outbreak Perfected to pump out some damage when you had no ammo at all. With the buff to Touch of Malice, I would have put Outbreak here, but now I think Touch of Malice is a better choice to use in that situation. If you have no ammo, if you can't find anything, swap to this real quick and just go to town. This doesn't kill you anymore as well. And even if you're in a rift or anything, you can just pump out some really solid damage as a team. If you don't have Touch of Malice, you have a few days to get it. So Touch of Malice will be my next choice. The next one being Malfeasance. Especially if you're on a hunter, Malfeasance is fantastic. But even if you're not on a hunter, Malfeasance is still a solid, I have no ammo, I need to pull something out option. But I wanted to put that in there. If you are not a hunter, Touch of Malice. If you are a hunter, Malfeasance, especially with Lucky Pants. But these are two options that you just want to have in case you need to swap to something. The next one being, just like I talked about, a sniper for long range. You want to have something hard hitting for close range, and that being Heritage. If you can get it with Reconstruction, Recombination, it's going to pump out insane burst damage. And I think having a slug in your primary slot is going to be fantastic. And you want to have something to deal with majors, champions maybe, or something up close really, really quick. The next one being a crowd control type of option, also passive damage as well, that being Wither Horde. If you don't know what Wither Horde is by now, put it under a rock, I guess. Wither Horde is going to be a nice, closing off a point thing. You can just shoot it at a target and just let it sit on the ground and get some damage over time on enemies, or just lock off a doorway maybe. If you're thinking of the beginning section of Crota with the totems, you have all the Cursed Thrall and the Acolytes and the Wizards and the Knights chasing you. This would be a pretty solid option to just stick behind you and let your team run away. The next thing being Izanagi's Burden. Izanagi's Burden is a very, very good sniper, just like Succession, but this is generally more meant for high burst damage while damaging a boss. With the Honed Dash ×4, you can do insane damage in one shot. This is also one of the weapons you see a lot of people do when they're doing Izzy rocket swaps. This is going to be a must-have in my opinion, depending on what the bosses are, how the bosses change. I would definitely recommend having Izanagi's Burden. The next thing is a hand cannon. Now, I know a lot of people don't really suggest hand cannons in day one raids. Traditionally, you would see me or someone else recommending a long range choice like a scout rifle or a pulse rifle. But I personally believe, especially with this raid, that hand cannons, especially with the buff to hand cannons this season, the insane buff, hand cannons will be a very solid choice, especially if you have a Fatebringer, Sunshot, malfeasance. Having a couple hand cannons are really nice to have in this raid and will help you and your team a lot. The reason I put Fatebringer, 1, because it's my favorite, 2, is something we used back in Crota back in Destiny 1, and 3, if you're using an exotic somewhere else, you won't be able to use malfeasance in this example. So you want to have, if you want to still use a hand cannon, you want to have a legendary choice as well. So even if you can't use an exotic for your hand cannons, you can use a legendary and still benefit from the hand cannon buff that was granted this season against minors and majors, which is insane. If you don't feel comfortable with a hand cannon, I would recommend going for a scout rifle or a pulse rifle in this situation. Personally, I'll be bringing a hand cannon instead. The next one is kind of in the same line as Succession. However, I think Arbalest is another fantastic choice to bring. We do know that barrier champions will be in this raid. We don't know where, we don't know how many, but I do think Arbalest is always a good choice to bring into a day one raid, simply because any anti-barriers you see, you can instantly strip their shields, stun them. Another thing that they talked about is that this raid is going to have a lot of elemental shields. Don't know what that means, but that means we will have some shields to deal with. Arbalest will allow you to break all those shields with Disruption Break and get Genesis procced. I think Arbalest is going to be a solid choice to have, especially with all this. If they say we are seeing a lot of shields, bring Arbalest. The next one is one of the exotic hand cannons that I think are worth bringing. This is a very situational one. This is going to be Lumina. Now, you've probably seen my video in regards to Lumina, but Lumina is going to be a fantastic choice, 1, to heal your team passively, and to give your team a damage buff during DPS or just for ad clear. This also gets the exotic hand cannon primary buff that all the hand cannons got. However, with this being exotic, it'll also generate additional chances of you dropping heavy and special for your fire team. So in a pinch, you can also use this to generate more heavy, which is very helpful for you and your fire team. And Lumina will give you a 35% buff for 11 seconds to you and your fire team, which in a damage scenario against, say, Crota or Death Singers or anything like that, or just anywhere else in the encounters, this will help you and your team maximize your damage. And I definitely think using Lumina, or at least having Lumina on your person, is going to be substantially helpful. And finally, there's going to be a blind and grenade launcher. In every raid, there's going to be a lot of enemies, and a lot of those enemies will be able to be disoriented or blinded. So having disorienting grenade launcher is going to be super helpful, because you can give your team a few seconds of blinded targets. Could be the difference between a death or having someone live, which can be the biggest difference in an encounter. So having this as a backup, this is something I'll be using on the first half of the raid at least. Personally, I like ignition code. Some people like pardon or dust. Depends on what you what you prefer. But as long as you have a disorienting grenade launcher that can blind targets, you'll be very helpful to your team. For the energy weapons, there's going to be a little bit of the same as far as use cases. However, I think there's a few things you should have. One being Sunshot. Sunshot, like I was saying earlier, has gotten the benefits from the exotic hand cannon buff and the hand cannon buff recently, where you do massive damage to majors and minors, and it also generates a lot of heavy. This season, Sunshot is just cooking. Normally, I would have probably brought another hand cannon or something else, but I think Sunshot in this season, especially this raid with all the hive that will have Curse Thrall and everything else, Sunshot's probably going to be an insanely high used weapon in this raid. So I personally think Sunshot would be fantastic. Like I said earlier, disorienting grenade launchers are always a plus. Personally, I'm just going to bring a truth teller. If you have another one like empty vessel, you can bring that as well. Personal preference, bring a GL with disorienting grenade launchers in the energy slot and the primary slot. This just helps make sure no matter what your loadout is, you have the option of bringing a grenade launcher that can disorient to your fire team. The next one is going to be, you guessed it, Forbearance. This is going to do a similar job to Wither Horde, except in my opinion way better. If you get it with a vicious chain reaction, especially in the first and second encounter, this is going to just absolutely dominate anything in its path. With chain reaction, it's going to just have everything blowing up. Also, Soul Drinker, you're going to get healed every time you damage targets. I think Forbearance is a must-have in this raid. The next weapon being a SMG. I know historically SMGs have not been fantastic in day one raids. This raid is a little bit different because we have a lot of low tier adds and our weapons have been buffed so dramatically that I think a SMG is going to be a solid choice if it can do pretty decent ad clear. My personal choice is going to be Ikelos SMG V103 just with Volt Shot. Another choice I was thinking of putting here was Risk Runner. A lot of the enemies that are hive, especially the wizards, do arc damage. So if you are in a pinch and need to get some extra damage resistance, you can always bring Risk Runner instead. But having an SMG that can do some chaining and killing a live enemies in a short time, I would definitely have on your person. The next weapon is what a lot of people call your dump weapon. That means when you have no ammo, or you just need to you dumped all your heavy and you just need to put out something in a short time. For example, Final Stand. We don't know if Crota's going to have a Final Stand. I would imagine he's going to have a Final Stand in his health bar. One of the choices I would bring is Merciless. You've probably seen everyone doing their solo Nezarec and using Merciless in Final Stand. As long as you can get a kill and activate the Impetuous buff, Merciless is going to be really good. I guess even without that, Merciless is still really good, but I'm bringing Merciless just in case, I have no ammo, I need to swap real quick and just dump off all my magazine and get some pretty good damage in a short time. I'm going to go ahead and talk about Fourth Horseman because they are just the same thing. Depending on how close I can be. If I'm really close to the boss, I might go for a Fourth Horseman instead, since it's going to be super high damage in a short time. But it depends, Merciless for probably longer range Final Stand, Fourth Horseman for an up close Final Stand. The next choice is going to be Cartesian Coordinate. Personally, I believe there's going to be a lot of solar shields in here, and I probably will still run, even though it got nerfed, double special. And if I do that, I want a weapon that can help me get more ammo when I pick up ammo. So I'm going to go with Cartesian. It's still a really good choice, especially with Left from Golden Vorpal for some pretty solid damage. It does a really, really, really good job at clearing out majors as well, and champions if we have to do that as well. Some people like to use Eremite. I think it has higher overall damage. I'm more of a fan of just the faster rate of fire. I don't mind shooting a couple extra shots if it, can clear out an enemy faster. I'm personally not bringing this for damage. I'm bringing this for ad clear and for just clearing out or passive extra damage. But if you prefer another fusion rifle, I'd bring that instead. The next choice being, just like I said earlier, with a sniper long range, depending on what your loader is another sniper. Personally, I'm going to bring Macabre just because it's going to be solid long range damage. It's going to allow you to, hit targets from far away. And if you have to use it in a damage scenario, triple tap Vorpal is not bad, just like Succession's, Recon Vorpal. So having a long range sniper in these energy slot and the primary slot is super nice. I would bring that. You can use another sniper. I know some people prefer Zume or Ikelos, especially if you're trying to maximize your solar surges, you could bring that as well instead. But, as long as you have a sniper, that's all you really need. The next one, just like the Heritage, you want to bring a slug shotgun. You know, again, if you're trying to match surges, find one that you can craft that is in the same element as your massively like big damage choice as far as element. So if it's solar, void, arc, say whatever, just make sure you match it if you really care. But personally, I'm bringing Nessa's Ablation, Recon Vorpal again. You know, it's going to be really nice depending on what I'm doing. You could also bring other slugs like trying to remember the name, First In Last Out. It's got auto loading. Personally, I prefer Reconstruction, but make sure you have one on deck in your kinetic slot and your special slot. The next one being Divinity. Even though Divinity has been nerfed, even though a lot of people do not think Divinity is going to be needed in this raid, including myself, I think it's better to have Divinity on your person than not having it on your person at all. My thinking currently is that we're not going to use it for Crota, but there's a chance we might use it for Death Stingers. I do think Death Stingers is probably going to be an actual damage encounter now. Just like if you think of Daughters and Oryx, everyone still uses Divinity there. I think personally you might still see people using Divinity on that encounter and then using Tractor Cannon, for example, on the Crota encounter. But like I said, this is the thinking of you don't know what to expect, you don't know what to bring, and you can only swap off of what you have on your person. So I'm still bringing Divinity. For heavies, this is going to be pretty much the easiest thing to bring. For different scenarios, you want to bring a sword. As you can tell, everyone just wants to bring a sword for movement. Eager Edge, that's all you need. Other half, bring it. Next up is Gallahorn. You don't know who's going to be the Gallahorn user. Having it on you in case you have to be the Gallahorn player, bring that. Also, when you're not doing DPS, Gallahorn is still really good for ad clear, so there's no reason not bringing G-Horn. Next up is the machine gun. As you can tell, everyone brings Commemoration. Machine guns are really good for ad clear, and it's a good solid backup choice if you can't use Gallahorn because you're using, say for example, Sunshot. So you want to have something for ad clear that's an exotic slot, something that is ad clear in the legendary slot in case you cannot use your quote-unquote exotic slot ad clear weapon. The next two rockets are really dependent on your personal preference, but I wanted to bring both here because there's a lot of talk about it. Apex Predator is easily the best rocket in the game, especially because you can craft it. Depending on the ability of generating max ammo with either, you know, Aeons or Cenotap or whatever. I know there's a lot of talk about the numbers. It also depends on how long the damage scenario is going to be. You're gonna bring an Apex Predator with either Recon Bait and Switch or, you know, Recon Bipod. I'm only bringing both in case, say for example, I'm in a scenario where I just cannot take advantage of Bait and Switch. You know, say I'm the Lumina person, or I'm Divinity person, or I'm the sword person, and I have to, like, you know, put out a little bit of damage, then pick up the sword or something. I want to still be able to do solid damage with my team. So I'm bringing both. Once I know what role I'm doing, I probably will only use one rocket in this raid, but having both on me will make sure no matter what job I'm doing and what the scenario is, I have something for it. Next one being Tractor Cannon. This is another one just like what I was talking about earlier. Really depends on what I'm doing. Really depends on what role I'm doing. Tractor Cannon is going to be very nice to have, give you that 30% debuff. If I can pair with like my slugs, I'm going to do that. If I'm the sword guy, you know, maybe I'm just a tractor guy if I'm running sword, who knows. But having it on your person is better than not having it on your person at all. The next one is a ad clear weapon. This is a major DPS like chunk choice as well. Not really for bosses, but for majors and champions. Xenophage is still really good. You know, one shot can delete a lot of enemies in a short time, and it's a solid ad clear weapon, and it just does really good DPS to majors and champions. So I'm bringing Xenophage as a backup. I probably will still use Commemoration, but like I said, you know, if I'm already using my exotic somewhere else, I want to have a backup somewhere else. So, you know, Commemoration or Xenophase, depending on what I'm using my exotic slot on. The next one is one of these choices in case we're at close range to a boss. Legend of Acris, especially if you're running like a Titan with a Void and no backup plans choice. Legend of Acris is really good damage. Think of Ektar from the Ghost of the Deep dungeon. I would bring this just in case we can get up close and personal and, you know, just shotgun him. This is a very odd choice that you might think of, but personally I'm bringing Sleeper Simulant. Back in Destiny 1, the Oversoul, which was the thing behind Crota, had a lot of health, and one of the best choices for shooting that Oversoul and stunning it or stopping it was Sleeper Simulant. So personally, I'm bringing Sleeper as a dark horse choice for this scenario or elsewhere. You know, I think Sleeper might have a little bit of usage in here, and I'm bringing it just in case I need to, like, you know, put a lot of damage on the Oversoul or something like that. And finally, Lament. Honestly, Lament is probably one of the best swords in the game, and with the Banner of War, like, subclass now, and how much damage you can pump out with your melee and your swords, if we are in a scenario where we're up close and we can do sword damage, and the Titans have Banner of War where everyone gets an extra 10% sword damage, there's no reason to not use Lament. So I'm going to bring Lament in this scenario as well, just in case we can get all close and have all 6 people right on top of the boss with swords. All in all, I think this should allow you to have everything you need, no matter the scenario, no matter the role, no matter the job you are doing in this coming up raid. If you have any extra recommendations, please let me know in the comments. Can't wait to, you know, see how Crota has changed. And yeah, should be a good time. Good luck to all of the raiders out there, and I will see you in the next video.